Today, we are at the beginning of a historic discovery. We are going to spend 8 days in total darkness to explore the exact depth of Krubera Cave, which scientists consider to be the deepest cave in the world. We are even hoping to discover new animal species that have been isolated in this subterranean world for millions of years.
I signed a contract acknowledging that this expedition could cost me my life. 8 days later, I came back carrying footage of transparent aquatic creatures living thousands of meters beneath the Caucasus Mountains, in total darkness, and a measurement that changed the purpose of our expedition: 2,224 meters. If you enjoy travel stories where the destination is far more dangerous than it looks, subscribe. Because when I signed that document, I still thought the hardest part would be going down. I was wrong. Our expedition into Krubera Cave was built around one question: how deep does it actually go? We had prepared for months: ropes, diving equipment, communications gear, food, medical supplies, cameras, batteries, and everything else required to spend 8 days underground. I expected cold, exhaustion, and claustrophobia. What I didn't expect was how quickly the surface world would stop feeling real. The first descent already changed my understanding of the cave. We moved through narrow passages where I couldn't turn around. In some sections, I had to squeeze sideways through rock with my chest pressed against the stone. Then came the vertical sections. Every meter downward increased the physical cost of returning. That was when I realized this wasn't simply a destination. It was a system. Every chamber led to another passage. Every passage had another obstacle. Water appeared where we hadn't expected it. Our clothes stayed wet, and the temperature kept dropping. There was no sunrise underground, no traffic, no normal sense of time. We slept, ate, worked, and rested beneath thousands of meters of rock. By the second day, even our schedule had become a problem. A piece of equipment that was easy to carry through a large chamber became almost impossible to maneuver through a squeeze. We had to reorganize everything, and every delay consumed food, batteries, energy, and time. By the third day, I was eating constantly and still getting weaker. Then I noticed my hands trembling. I wasn't consciously afraid. That scared me more than the darkness. Fear could be controlled. Physical weakness was different. Then we reached water. At first, it looked like an ordinary underground pool. But when our lights reached deeper, something moved. A small aquatic creature. Its body was pale and almost transparent, and parts of it seemed to disappear against the water. We recorded everything. Then we noticed something that made the discovery much more significant. There were several of them. They were living in an environment completely isolated from sunlight. We had entered the cave expecting to measure depth. Now we were documenting an ecosystem, and we still had thousands of meters to go. By the fourth day, the expedition had become an endurance test. I was losing weight rapidly. I had expected to lose some weight, but not 10 kilograms. The combination of constant movement, cold, stress, limited food, wet clothing, and carrying equipment through tight passages was draining me. I began conserving every movement. I checked my equipment repeatedly because I knew a small mistake made by an exhausted person could become fatal. Then we reached a section that nearly forced us to stop. The route ahead required another difficult sequence of vertical shafts and submerged passages. Our schedule was already slipping. Turning back meant losing the chance to document the deepest sections. Continuing meant committing ourselves to an even longer return. I looked upward and realized something that hadn't fully registered before. The surface wasn't simply far away. It was days away. That was when the cave genuinely frightened me. There was no monster, no dramatic disaster, just distance. Thousands of meters of rock above us, and the knowledge that a serious equipment failure could turn the cave into a trap. We continued. By the fifth day, the environment felt completely disconnected from anything I knew on the surface. Some passages opened into huge chambers. Others narrowed until we had to remove equipment and push it ahead separately. Our progress became painfully slow. Then we found another clue. Water movement suggested that the cave system extended farther than we had previously assumed. We began mapping everything more carefully. Every measurement mattered. We weren't just trying to reach the bottom anymore. We were trying to prove exactly where the bottom was. By the sixth day, my priorities had become simple. Eat, drink, check equipment, move, record, rest, repeat. Then we reached the deepest point of our route. Our instruments produced the measurement we had been working toward, 2,224 meters. I stared at the number. There was no celebration, just a screen, exhausted hands, and a number representing days of movement through a world almost nobody could see. But that number changed the expedition. We hadn't simply gone deeper. We had evidence. We documented the route, recorded the measurements, and captured footage of the transparent aquatic organisms living in darkness. The biggest surprise was that I had gone underground, expecting depth to be the discovery. Instead, the depth had led us to life. But we still had to get out. That was what I had underestimated. Reaching the bottom was only half the journey. The climb back was brutal. Every kilogram of equipment felt heavier. Every narrow passage seemed longer. My body was already running on reserves. By the seventh day, I knew I had lost a huge amount of weight, but I didn't know how much. At that point, I didn't care. I just wanted daylight. On the eighth day, we finally reached the surface. The first thing I noticed was the light. After days underground, daylight felt almost painful. I didn't care about the scenery. I wanted a shower, fresh food, and to walk somewhere without ropes. Then I weighed myself. I had lost 10 kilograms. But the number that stayed with me wasn't my weight. It was 2,224. We went into Krubera looking for the deepest point. We came out with a measurement, rare footage of organisms adapted to permanent darkness, and even more questions. How long had those creatures been isolated? How many other species had we missed? What exists in passages we couldn't reach? And the question I still think about is the simplest one. If life can survive and evolve in complete darkness thousands of meters beneath the surface, how much of that world remains unknown? I went down thinking I was going to discover the bottom of the earth. Instead, I discovered how little we understand about what exists beneath our feet. And one detail still bothers me. We measured the deepest point we could reach, but that doesn't necessarily mean we found the end. If you were in my position, would you trust the measurement? Or do you think the cave could continue deeper? Tell me your theory in the comments, and subscribe if you want to hear where I went looking next.